I live at the end of a long, windy road. It takes us about 10 minutes to drive down it, sometimes more. It's a dirt road with tall trees to either side. We own land all up and down it, so there are no other houses along the road. We never stray off the path, we never get out of the car, and we never drive it at night. Our property was surrounded by an electric fence, and a sturdy gate across the road. We don't have guests over, and we are very strict with our no trespassing rules. But tonight, something is wrong. My mom had to go out for something. I don't remember what. I was doing homework when she told me. She left around 5, and it wasn't until the chimes went off from the living room that I realized I hadn't heard her in the house for some time. Those chimes have been there for as long as I can remember. They go off at sundown, and that's our reminder to not travel down the road or stray into the woods. I jumped out of my seat and hurried into the living room. It was empty. The chimes had stopped ringing, but I could still hear them in my head. I went to the window and pushed the curtains to the side. My car was still there, but my mom's was not. I don't know why we've never been allowed to stray from the house after nightfall, but the ominous shadows that the trees cast reminded me of the fear that has been ingrained into me for years. I grabbed my phone from my room and checked to see if I missed any messages from her. This is what I saw. My car broke down in the driveway. I need you to come get me ASAP. Are you coming? I've only got half an hour before nightfall. Hurry. And then in all caps, she said, "Come get to me now." The last message said, "It's too late. I'm spending the night in the car. Lock all the doors and windows. If you hear anything, don't investigate. I'll see you in the morning. I love you. Never forget that." What the hell? My mother was stuck on the driveway, a many-mile-long driveway, and I'd essentially stranded her there. I looked outside again. The darkness had fallen quickly, but I could still see across the yard fairly well. I couldn't make her stay out there all night, right? I mean, that's been the one main rule in the house since I was born. Don't go outside after sunset. I didn't know what happens after sunset. I just knew it couldn't be good. I always assumed it was some kind of wildlife, but I never actually saw what was so dangerous out there. At least, not until tonight. I tried calling my mom, but the signal wouldn't let the call go through. Instead, I sent my mom a text. "I'm so sorry. I just saw these. I'm coming to get you." Immediately her typing bubble popped up, and a second later her text came through. "No, absolutely not. Stay home, stay safe. Don't go outside." I looked outside the window. It was almost completely dark, but I could still see where the trees started. We have an electric fence surrounding our yard, and motion sensor cameras and lights set up everywhere. One time I remember there had been something that had set off the cameras and lights. The next morning I'd walked in on Mom watching the footage. She turned off the screen and quickly ushered me out of the room, but not before I caught a glimpse of what was on it. It looked like a man, probably middle-aged. The video quality was poor and my glimpse was so brief I couldn't make out any details. But I do know that something was unsettling about it. Something was off about that man. When I'd asked about who was trespassing, Mom just told me not to worry about it and called the company who did our fencing. I was torn. Mom told me to leave her, but what if something happened to her? Her texts were urgent, and I knew something was wrong in our woods. Something dangerous. But this was my mom. Whatever was out there, I couldn't leave her. I grabbed my keys and went to the door. My stomach was queasy and there was some sort of lump in my throat, but I ignored it. I took a timid step outside and gently closed the door behind me. I'd been outside at night before, but my mom was always home. It was never for more than 5 minutes, but I never went past the fencing. Honestly, I'd barely been outside of the light cast from the porch and windows. I told myself that didn't matter and climbed into the car. Somehow I felt both safer and like I wasn't even close to danger. I quickly slid the keys into the ignition and started the car. My headlights came on and I sighed in relief. The light was like my safety blanket. As long as there was light, there was hope. Even if I was surrounded by darkness. I slowly pulled away from my house and started down the driveway. Our long, twisty, horrible driveway. The ride was bumpy and slow. I was going slowly for a few reasons. Firstly, I'd never driven this road at night. In fact, I've driven at nights only about 20 times in my life, and I wasn't coming home those nights. Secondly, the road is unpaved, and I can't remember where all the holes are. Finally, I don't want to accidentally hit an animal, or my mom's car. I don't know where Mom broke down, but she had to be far enough away that walking would be too risky. I kept going. 2 more miles. Then 2 more. Nothing. Another 2. Still no sign of her or anything. Finally, I reached the gate. I never saw her, and I never passed her car. There was no way I could have missed her. Our driveway was only wide enough for one car to be on it at a time, and it was lined on both sides with not only tall trees but a single string of barbed wire. There was no way I'd driven past her. Maybe she wasn't on the driveway. Maybe she'd broken down somewhere else and I'd just messed it up in my head. I pulled out my phone and checked the messages. I read them once, then read them again just to be sure. My car broke down in the driveway. She had to be there, but she wasn't. My stomach was starting to fold in on itself, and I looked anxiously out my window at the dark trees that surrounded me. For the first time, I locked the doors. There was just enough space here for me to turn the car around, so I did and began the slow trek back to my house. I had only gone about a mile when I noticed something moving out of the corner of my eye. My entire body filled with dread, and I could feel the blood draining into the lowest parts of my body. But still, my head kept saying it could be my mom, even when the entire rest of me said I should keep going no matter what. I forced my foot to press on the brake and my car came to a stop. Whatever was moving out there was just out of clear eyesight. It hovered just outside of the headlights, in the shadows of the trees. I was somewhat aware, in the back of my mind, that there was no car around, and nowhere to hide a car. It was too hard to see exactly what was moving out there. I forced my head to turn and my eyes to focus on it. It was tall, on 2 feet, but too small to be a bear. I wish it was a bear. I watched in frozen terror as the thing came into light. It was a man, I think. It was shaped like a man. Maybe it was the lights, but his skin was pale, like almost white. His clothes were dirty and his mouth was slightly open. He slouched, and as he drew closer, I saw that he walked with a funny lurch. But that wasn't what was truly horrifying. His eyes were gone. It looked like they'd been clawed out, perhaps recently, as his face glistened with fresh blood. Or maybe he clawed at his face regularly, because the gaping holes were much bigger and went farther back than they would have if just his eyes were gone, but it looked like most his face had been torn. There was a dark stain on his hands, as if he'd done it to himself. I don't know. All I know is that I slammed on the gas and drove as fast as I dared back home. I jumped out of my car and raced inside, where I locked every window and door into the house. My mom still isn't home. I'm not sure where she is. There is one thing I'm almost certain about, though. I think I passed at least 2 other figures on the hectic drive back. One was small, and the other was about the size and shape of my mother.